What's up, folks? This is Acid Root, so I'm going to review Young Thug's Barter 6, also called the Carter 6, if not for Lil Wayne and a kind of potential lawsuit that he had. So, this was one of the breakout kind of projects by Young Thug that kind of got me introduced to him, and I wanted to review this back like in the first year that I was doing reviews on Acid Roots, which was 2015. And I remember as this came out, there was a big hype about it, but the thing about it was that kind of irked me a lot was he never quite released this on CD. And at least to my knowledge, it never came out on CD, and I didn't want to kind of handpick some of these songs and kind of wonder, because it was either, I kind of figured that it was either going to be I handpick like one or two and wind up liking the whole album, or I get the whole album and only like one or two, wind up liking only one or two songs. So either way, I was gonna wind up getting fucked over out of some money. So I hesitated with this project, and 6 years passed. Young Thug dropped compilations. He has a label. He kind of lost some of his affiliation with Birdman. I mean, he's still probably cool with him, but he's not quite in a mentorship like he was back in 2015. And he's dropped albums and a bunch of stuff in between all that time. But that's kind of the situation there. Back around these times, as I'm reviewing Barter 6, Lil Wayne was having difficulty putting out the Carter 5, so Young Thug took it upon himself to have the torch passed to him by calling his project the Carter 6. And Lil Wayne didn't like that so well, so he got, his gang affiliation allowed him to just say, well, it's going to be called Barter 6 then. So that was kind of the situation. And I don't quite feel it's as good as, like, the best of the Carters, the 5 Carters that I've heard, like the Carter 1, the Carter 3, maybe the Carter 2, but it's probably better than the Carter 5 in slight cases. I mean, the Carter 5 is pretty large, but I think it's arguable that it can compete with that project. And the Carter 4 on its worst and kind of semi-worst days is probably better than some of that on there also. So that's kind of the situation. But I would have to say that Young Thug kind of has originality going for him, energy, and kind of innovation. So those are just some things that kind of happen across this project, and it kind of gives it a new life and that sort of stuff, just despite what happened. I mean, it's kind of a blend of just like psychedelic, almost kind of with that sort of vibe, but then also in a trap kind of mentality. And then, of course, mixed in with a lot of Atlanta cats in there, and then, obviously Cash Money, even though it's only Birdman that's on there. So that's kind of some of the stuff that you get with this project. And really, there's not much promotion-wise to talk about on here. The single Check is pretty good. I feel like this is a good intro to this project. I wish I would have messed with it more back in the day, because it's a very doomed sounding song. I mean, it has a real kind of uh, gloomy, almost kind of a Twilight-like feel to it. I mean, honestly, he could have gone with a more spry and energetic first single, but it kind of has like a different approach. I mean, I think Meek Mill had a song called Check back in 2015, but I think this song by Young Thug is better than the Meek Mill Check song. And also, I would say this competes with some of the stuff that Future did in 2015. Future dropped Dirty Sprite 2, and Dirty Sprite 2 is basically one of Future's most heralded albums. But if there would have been more songs like Check, I probably would have given the Barter 6 a way higher score than I'm getting ready to give it, just because this is the sort of stuff that was needed, and I definitely felt like it should have had a second single. I mean, there's no excuse not to, coming off of this sort of acclaim that he had going in, and the sort of stuff that he was going to wind up messing with, and bridge the gap towards him doing more kind of vigorously. I definitely felt like, as far as that went, there should have been more to it. But he did drop 4 music videos as far as that kind of went. So I guess those are kind of like pseudo singles, Constantly Hating, With That, and Halftime all had music videos also. At least that's what Wikipedia says. And all of those are some of the songs I favor on this project. So that's good. Halftime basically has the best beat on this whole project. Really stellar song. Probably better to me than Check was. That definitely should have been the second single had they promoted it. Constantly Hating kind of has like an off kind of put it. It's a real kind of this awkward kind of sounding song, and it's not in a bad way. It reminds me of something like from, I almost want to say, from a video game like Crash Bandicoot or something, but it just has a real tribal kind of feel and like a stoner type vibe. And I like the kind of way that that went. And then With That sounded just like Check, only a more kind of imposing kind of trap feel to it. And it just, the way that that song kind of worked. I mean, that's the sort of stuff that like most trap artists do. I mean, Young Thug could have probably done songs like With That and Check the whole way through, but there is other stuff on here to kind of vary some of that up. But now I'm going to talk about the songs that I enjoy out of 13, and then I'll kind of dissect the rest of the project. So I wound up enjoying 5 songs out of 13 that I recommend to you, and I'm going to go ahead and list those. So the songs I recommend are Check, Halftime, With That, Constantly Hating, and Numbers. Now I talked about some of these. I told you about how doomed sounding that Check sounded, and With That was kind of like another trap song that's very similar to that. It's typical trap, especially for 2015. Constantly Hating, I described that to you, and then Halftime basically has the best beat on here. I mean, he really just dances around that whole song. I mean, that's like, if chances are, I mean, I would have to say between Check and Halftime, you're probably not going to like this project if you can't figure those to be. Well, I know that sounds opinionated, but those, seemingly would have some of the more active kind of feels about them. But then also Numbers was kind of something that reminded me of what Lil Wayne used to do, kind of like a depressing and kind of reality check type song. I mean, just the way that kind of felt. The production, at least from what I was getting from that, kind of had that more sort of feel, but it felt good to kind of get that sort of approach. It felt very like, uh, it felt very imperative. It felt very imperative for that sort of thing. But yeah, to talk about some of the songs I didn't enjoy. I kind of felt like Amazing was a waste of a Jacquees hook. I mean, really, he's like one of the more recent go-to hook makers, kind of like how Trey Songz and Akon used to be back in those days, or further back. But Jacquees really didn't handle it that well. And really, for the most part, there were no guests on this whole album. There's a lot of guests on here. Really, Young Thug doesn't have that many songs by himself, but none of the guests really left any sort of impact on me. That's another thing. I mean, really, I don't know who Lil Duke is, but he didn't really strike me. T.I. and Boozy Badass really didn't contribute much at all. I mean, Can't Tell was not very noteworthy. Uh, Jacquees, Birdman kind of halfway did it, but Birdman has never really been like the go-to hit maker. I mean, it's not like he's subpar, but obviously he's more for his contributions is like, the 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 wingman, and that's where he feels kind of more like a solid wingman more so than like an actual lyricist that you go to for like making sure. But he is a good mentor to Young Thug. But Constantly Hating was probably the better one on there. So none of the guests really help. I feel like the singing at times is kind of awkward, like it is on Dome. And really, I also kind of think that some of the song titles are kind of not, they don't jump off the page. So, the song titles just don't really jump off the page. Songs like Amazing, Dome, Dream, Check, Numbers. I mean, some of these just kind of don't really have, they don't spark interest as if, wow, that's interesting. I wonder what that song's about. Doesn't really have that sort of stuff. Tupac was pretty good at that sort of thing. Even Lil Wayne, even though he wasn't quite as poetic as Tupac, at least had some of those, like, Shoot Me Down or Fireman or, like bring it back, that sort of stuff, but it just doesn't really have that same concept as well. So it's kind of, I mean, it's what you see is basically what you get, and if you're already bored before you even know about the song, and then the song doesn't contribute, I mean, there's not too many songs that I would have to say where if you're not interested in like what the song title says, it's going to change your mind. Like I do feel like the concept of haters and constantly hating, I mean, that's that's still a clever concept despite the popularity of hater songs. And halftime, I don't think, at least up to this point, I've ever heard a rap song called Halftime, so that one was an original one. And just that sort of stuff. So it's just kind of, I feel like you're getting it more about the feeling more so than being able to say some of these. I do feel like, with most trap around 6 years ago, 2014 through 2017 or so, there was a lot of drug induced stuff. Young Thug kind of is similar to Future, only he just feels more relevant and, less. It doesn't seem like Young Thug was on lean as much. And that's kind of the thing. I mean, maybe he was, but it just doesn't have like the same kind of warped, distorted feel as much as like Dirty Sprite 2 did. And then also to kind of say some of the later stuff that Future kind of did. I mean, obviously, like it has a more clear type feel to it, but then it also kind of is trap. Well, I feel like it's a more, let's put it this way, it's a more trap, a regular kind of 2010s trap version of like what Future would do, less drug induced. And that's kind of the situation. So Young Thug kind of has that, plus he's more relevant, at least back in 2015. I mean, he still is. I mean, I've seen his stuff nowadays hit #1, and he just has a broad popularity, but this was kind of him on the upswing and kind of, back when he was hungry and really hungry. That just kind of happens to be a thing, but I would have to say I'm going to give this album like a 4.5 out of 10, just because, obviously I think there were 4 music videos, but I don't know. I mean, I suppose I could say that that's decent promotion, but none of these songs really charted that well. And I mean, it's just kind of, I mean, that's the thing with rap songs. When you get a music video, you kind of feel like, well, that's promotion because they went to the trouble of making a music video. But I don't know how well the radio picked up some of this stuff. And really, this did not have the most terrific promotion to begin with. That's kind of awkward. I mean, he wasn't quite in Lil Wayne territory, but, the youngins really liked him. And that's kind of the thing. So that's what he had going. Is like I said, he had the relevancy kind of going. The youngins really liked him, but apart from relevancy and just the kind of originality, innovation that he brought, in some cases it was kind of short-handed. So he needed a few more punches to pack in order to make this a more beefed up release, especially just with Check being the only song that really, I mean, there's no song on here that I feel like would have been an overnight, complete, full-blown success, which is kind of the thing. But there are good songs, at least in a, kind of minor handful. But yeah, the social score, I'll give a 4 out of 10. I'll give it about the same score just because it did have 4 music videos. But like I said, as far as having like a massive kind of hit that would have as far as having like a massive kind of hit that would have really gotten this like way more kind of distribution and widespread type stuff, it didn't really have that. But that's just kind of the thing. So yeah, 4.5 score out of 10. It's promising, but that's just kind of the thing about it. It's promising, but it needed more volume to kind of back it up. So that's what you get there.